Chapter 1071. However, right at this moment, a faint smile suddenly appeared on Tang Wulin's face as he sat within his mecha's pilot room. Even if anyone could see the smile that was currently on his face, they wouldn't be able to comprehend it. This next attack will spell the end for you. The tyrant dragon had already reached Bubble King, yet he remained completely unflustered as the propeller on his mecha's back was activated, abruptly sending it flying upward. It completed an exquisite evasive maneuver up above, and the maneuver had been completed so quickly that the spectators almost lost sight of him for an instant. Were these maneuvers really possible for a generic mecha to perform? It was undoubtedly the case that this had exceeded the limits of generic mecha. However, if one were to look closely, they discovered that a rubbery substance of the same color as his bubbles had appeared over all of the joints of his mecha, and that substance had clearly fortified the generic mecha, allowing it to perform maneuvers that would have been far too strenuous to complete otherwise. The bubble that Bubble King had released expanded even further. At this point, even if Tang Wulin could still somehow withstand his attack, he was still firmly on the back foot and could only passively defend himself. However, just as the massive bubble was about to be released, Bubble King's mecha suddenly faltered in midair. The pause was extremely abrupt, to the extent that even the spectators were momentarily rooted to the spot. Immediately thereafter, the bubble around him began to turn red. What was happening? Why was he making the bubble turn red so quickly? Didn't this mean that it was going to explode? At this point, virtually all of the spectators had identified the abilities that the colors of the bubbles corresponded to, but they were completely perplexed about why Bubble King was choosing to detonate his own bubble prior to releasing it. Before the spectators had a chance to react, a resounding boom had already rung out, and the huge bubble exploded. What was going on? Had Bubble King just committed suicide? All of the spectators were completely flabbergasted. Bubble King's mecha had released its protective barrier, but the barrier of a generic mecha was no match for such a devastating explosion, and the mecha was instantly reduced to a ball of fire. Immediately thereafter, a gigantic tail that was shimmering with dark golden light swept through the air, instantly sending the fireball flying, and as it hurtled through the air, a string of loud explosions erupted. The victory goes to number 66. He won. Who would have thought that the match would conclude under such farcical circumstances just as Bubble King had seized an absolute advantage? It appeared as if Bubble King had committed suicide while his opponent was completely at his mercy. Tang Wulin's mecha slowly stood up, and the gargantuan tyrant dragon stood beside the mecha, looking extremely intimidating. Despite the spectators' confusion, Tang Wulin was well aware of how he had secured that victory. A faint smile appeared on Tang Wulin's face as he sat within the pilot room. As expected, there was a weakness. After all, just as Bubble King was about to unleash his final full frontal attack, a possibility suddenly occurred to Tang Wulin. His bubbles may have been impervious to water and fire, and possessed exemplary defensive and offensive prowess, but he still felt the need to hide something. As such, the thing that he was hiding had to be a fatal weakness. As such, a notion occurred to him. It was quite possible that these seemingly impervious bubbles were unable to keep out one type of energy, and that was spiritual power. That's right, it was spiritual power. Whenever Bubble King released a bubble, lights of different colors would flash within those bubbles, and that was most likely the process of different soul skills being injected into the bubbles. This meant that the basic bubbles were most likely all the same, and they only attained different abilities after the soul skills were injected into them. In that case, it was very likely that his weakness emerged whenever he was injecting his soul skill into his bubbles, and he was trying to hide this process by concealing himself within a mecha. There was also another possibility. The bubbles themselves may not be stable enough on their own, and he had to forcibly exert control over them in order to make them truly effective for battle. Under these circumstances, the first thing Tang Wulin thought of was that his opponent could possess a spiritual weakness, which meant that if he were to be disrupted on a spiritual level, something would most likely go wrong. Not all soul masters possessed spiritual offensive abilities, and spirit attribute soul masters were extremely rare. However, don't forget that the Tang sect had the purple demon eyes. Not only was this a great technique for cultivating one's spiritual power, it could also unleash a spiritual attack. The more abundant one's spiritual power was, the more effective the purple demon eyes would be. Tang Wulin's spiritual power was already close to the spirit domain realm, which was undoubtedly an extremely high level, and even among titled Douluos, there were very few who could match him in this regard. As such, his purple demon eyes were naturally devastatingly powerful. Thus, he decided to experiment with the spiritual attack right as his opponent was releasing a soul skill, and it turned out that he was right. The spiritual disruption caused Bubble King to lose control over his bubble for a short time, and that was all that was required for it to explode. As such, Bubble King had essentially fallen on his own sword. Even so, Tang Wulin still had a lot of admiration for his opponent. Even though he had been defeated, there was no way that he would be piloting a generic mecha in real life, and as long as his mecha in the real world possessed powerful spiritual defensive prowess, then he really would be presenting a near invincible package. It was no wonder that he had chosen to become a mecha pilot when it was very likely that he wasn't even a battle armor master. This was the underlying secret. In any case, this Bubble King would definitely be considered to be one of the most powerful mecha's pilots in the real world. Compared to the frustrating and inexplicable victory he'd secured over Sima Jinkai, this one made a lot more sense as he at least knew how he had won. However, there was more admiration than excitement in his heart. During this competition, he had witnessed the abilities of many powerful beings, and the experience had shown him that this world was filled with beings with unimaginable powers. He had witnessed so many strange martial souls, soul skills, and battle styles, and this had greatly broadened his horizons. Furthermore, this experience had improved his practical combat experience far more so than in his past cultivation. As such, Tang Wulin was genuinely grateful toward Blood One for assigning him this mission. Now, Tang Wulin could say with confidence that he was Blood 9 of the Blood God Battalion. He had made it into the grand final of both the Mecha Battle and Soul Master Battle disciplines, and he knew that his cover had most likely already been blown. After he unleashed his Golden Dragon Roar, there were surely some keen-eyed spectators who had identified the fact that many of his abilities overlapped with those of the Golden Dragon King. He had made it into the grand final of both disciplines, and it could already be said that he was the true overall champion of the Star Battle.net Inter-Federation competition. Tang Wulin didn't pay much attention to the spectators' cries of surprise and expressions of befuddlement. He left the Star Cabin, and the first thing that he did was take a hot shower. Even though the Star Battle.net was only a simulated world, the sticky sensation that Tang Wulin had experienced from Bubble King's bubbles was still very unpleasant, and he felt a lot better after taking a shower. His semi-final opponents were already this difficult to deal with. What challenges would he face in the grand final? It had been a very long time since Tang Wulin had looked forward to something as much as he was looking forward to this. He was truly filled with anticipation for the grand final matches. He wasn't even thinking about whether he would be able to become the final champion. In comparison, being able to fight these powerful opponents brought him even more joy than becoming the champion, and this was a path that he had to take. He didn't meditate as he had won this battle more so with his own intelligence. In reality, he still had many trump cards he hadn't used, and he only unleashed a small number of his soul skills. As such, even if he hadn't found Bubble King's fatal weakness, it was still far from certain that he would have lost that match. However, being able to defeat a powerful opponent with his intelligence was still very satisfying to him. After exiting his dormitory room, he didn't go to the resting area. There were simply far too many people there. Almost everyone in the Legion knew of him now, and he could no longer find the peace and quiet that he sought in the cafe. Thus, Tang Wulin arrived in his forging workshop instead. It had been quite a few days since he'd last visited his workshop. He had been constantly busying himself with preparing for the finals recently, and as soon as he caught sight of his familiar forging bench, a scorching sensation immediately welled up in his heart. Following the conclusion of the competition, he was going to be very busy. Firstly, he was going to prepare the metals required for his suit of 3-word battle armor, at least to a basic level. On top of that, he had to construct a black mecha that was suitable for himself with the best materials possible. The mecha battle competition and Ling Wu Yu's instructions had made him develop a strong sense of fascination toward mechas, and besides, there was no conflict between being a battle armor master and a mecha pilot. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case in the generic mechas supplied by the Star Battle.net, as there wasn't enough space in there after he donned his suit of battle armor. Chapter 1072. However, the situation would be completely different when it came to a mecha crafted by himself. If he could possess a black mecha that was perfectly suited to him, then his battle stamina and combat prowess would definitely both reach a whole new level. He had already set a goal for himself. He was going to progress steadily in his soul power, striving to reach the soul sage level as soon as possible. At the same time, he was going to prepare the materials required for his suit of 3-word battle armor as quickly as he could, then dedicate all of his efforts to crafting a mecha for himself. After doing all that, he would finally have developed a certain foundation and could begin to prepare for the rebuild of Shrek Academy. After that, he had to visit his friends to give them their 100,000-year-old soul spirits to elevate the overall powers of Shrek 7 monster so that everyone would have more influence in the military. Of course, that was still far from enough. All 7 of them had to become titled Douluos, and only then would they truly have some speaking rights in the Soul Master world, as well as in the military and the federal parliament. They were going to face stern stern opposition in their endeavor to rebuild Shrek Academy, and the most powerful of those opponents were most likely going to be the federal parliament and the spirit pagoda. Never had Tang Wuling been under the impression that he would be able to do everything on his own. He had to recruit more help. If he wanted to stand at the pinnacle of the entire continent, he had to develop his own forces, and that would require time to accumulate. Following the time he'd spent at the Blood God Legion thus far, the lust for vengeance in his heart had condensed. He was less fixated on doing things quickly and had learned to see the bigger picture. He wasn't alone. After all, he still had his friends and the support of the Tang sect, and what he had to do was use all of the resources at his disposal to make himself more powerful. Soon, a rhythmic tapping akin to that of rain falling on a banana leaf rang out from within his forging room, and the sound was very pleasant to the ears. By immersing himself in his forging, Tang Wuling's heart entered a completely calm and placid state. He made it into the grand final of both disciplines. That truly is an incredible feat. Jiang Wanyun wore a rather peculiar look on his face, and he felt as if his heart were dripping blood. Why hadn't he insisted on taking Tang Wuling under his wing earlier? Perhaps he could have had a chance. At the time, Tang Wuling had technically attacked him, and if he refused to drop those charges, even Cao Daja wouldn't have been able to protect him. He could only blame himself for being too easygoing. Jiang Wanyun watched the footage of the match between Tang Wuling and Bubble King 3 times, giving internal size the entire time. You're becoming more and more convinced by my judgment, right? A slightly gloating voice suddenly sounded from beside him. Jiang Wanyun grumbled. Do you not know how to knock? We're such close friends. Knocking would be creating distance between us, wouldn't it? A man had suddenly appeared in the chair on the other side of his desk, and it was none other than the blood one that he had just been cursing in his mind. What's your plan? Jiang Wanyun asked as he appraised Cao Daja with an intense gaze. Cao Daja chuckled. You sure are good at sniffing out these things. I came to find you to discuss this matter. I know your petty mind is thinking about trying to take him away from me, but set that aside for now, and let's discuss the feasibility of my plan. After watching his recent match footage, I feel like he's getting closer and closer to reaching maturity, and he's performed even more exceptionally than I imagined. It has to be said that Shrek Academy possesses foresight that's superior to ours. Jiang Wanyun harumphed. Of course, Shrek Academy has been the #1 academy on the continent for over 20,000 years. Even over 20,000 years ago, their academy mantra was that they only accepted monsters and no ordinary people. Of course, we can't match them when it comes to selecting talents. Come to think of it, your Tang sect has also been around for 20,000 years, right? It's somewhat interconnected with Shrek Academy, so why isn't your sect nurturing these freakish talents? Cao Daja grumbled. I'm not here to bicker with you. I'm going to tell you my plan, and you can tell me if I've missed any details. Within the abyssal passageway, thump, thump, thump. Faint booms were ringing out within the passageway. Jiang Wuyu's brows furrowed slightly as he cast his gaze toward the passageway, only to find that there was nothing there. He turned toward his vice battalion commander and asked, "Have you investigated that region? We've already conducted an exhaustive investigation with our devices, but we didn't detect any horrors of abyssal creatures. With our newest detection equipment, even possession demons wouldn't be able to escape our detection, so I can verify that there are definitely no abyssal creatures, at least not on our end." Lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub. Then where is that noise coming from? Jiang Wuyu was rather displeased. A wry smile appeared on his deputy's face. I don't know. We've already investigated all of the passageways, and the results have all been the same. There are no signs or traces of any abyssal creatures. Don't be too uptight, battalion commander. The abyssal tide has just concluded recently. According to the precedents set in the past several thousand years, there won't be any large-scale attacks from the abyssal plane for at least 2 or 3 more decades. The recently concluded abyssal tide wasn't as ferocious as we expected, so the abyssal creatures wouldn't have suffered very heavy losses, but at the very least, they shouldn't be able to attack us for at least a year or 2. I certainly hope that's the case. It's just that I've been feeling rather uneasy lately. In any case, all of you keep your eyes peeled. We can't let anything happen while we're on duty here. Understood? Yes. After issuing some instructions to his subordinates, Jiang Wuyu was feeling slightly more at ease. He was feeling quite cautious, perhaps because there had been a lot of pressure on him recently. This wasn't the first time that strange sounds had appeared in the abyssal passageway, so if the investigation yielded no results, then it most likely wasn't a big deal. On the thought of the recent pressure he'd been facing, a sense of anger immediately welled up in his heart. All of this pressure stemmed from none other than Tang Wuling. This guy was way too insane. He should be participating in the semi-finals of the mecha battle competition now, right? Please lose. If he would have progressed to the grand final in both disciplines, then Jiang Wuyu would be extremely disheartened. Back in the day, he was once an idol figure that the younger generation of the Blood God Legion looked up to, but with the arrival of Tang Wuling, he was immediately discarded like an old rag. What was even more frustrating to him was that Long Yakshu was still just as cold toward him as ever. She had clearly already given up on Tang Wuling, but she still refused to give him a chance. Even his sister couldn't help him in this regard, and she was constantly scolding him for having a low EQ. How did he have a low EQ? He wasn't very good with words, but was that a crime? Jiang Wuyu was feeling quite frustrated, but he couldn't do anything about this situation. After this round of guard duty, he was going to confront Yakshu and tell her his feelings no matter what. He had already prepared himself to confess, then borderline harass her until she agreed. He was going to put everything on the line. The abyssal passageway fell silent again. No signs of abyssal creatures were detected in the 36 branches of the passageway, but the main passageway that had been sealed for countless years seemed to be trembling slightly amid the faint budding noise. After returning to his dormitory room from his forging workshop, Tang Wuling was feeling as light as a feather, and this feeling came from expressing himself to his heart's content. Every hammer blow that he struck during the forging process allowed him to vent some of his frustrations, clearing his mind and calming his heart. After returning to his dormitory room, he was surprised to discover that even though he'd only participated in 2 semi-final matches, he could clearly sense that his spiritual power had increased once again. As expected, pressure was the best catalyst for improvement. Not only had his spiritual power improved, his golden dragon spear had also undergone a transformation. Chapter 1073. Following his battle against Sima Jinkai, this feeling hadn't been very pronounced, but he immediately sensed that something was amiss following his battle against Bubble King the day before. His golden dragon spear seemed to have undergone a subtle transformation. In the beginning, he couldn't quite put his finger on what kind of transformation this was. All he could feel was that the golden dragon spear seemed to be different somehow. Following his forging session, he had entered a tranquil state, and thus, he was able to identify just how it had changed. The golden dragon spear had become sharper. Sima Jinkai's dragon slaying saber had clearly benefited immensely from the stimulus provided by his golden dragon spear. But what about his golden dragon spear? What had it gained from that battle? Only after some careful inspection did he gradually realize that the dragon slaying saber had been like a whetstone for his golden dragon spear. Following every single clash, his golden dragon spear became sharper, and it was truly coming into its own. He was able to penetrate Bubble King's most powerful defenses, and that wasn't just because he had used his golden dragon vibrational explosion. Another contributing factor was that his golden dragon vibrational explosion had become sharper than before. In its current state, the golden dragon spear was so sharp that one couldn't help but tremble in the wake of its aura. Even his spear intent had combined to a greater extent with his golden dragon spear, and the two were truly beginning to fuse as one. As it turned out, the dragon slaying saber and golden dragon spear were a pair of symbiotic weapons that greatly benefited one another, and this win-win situation naturally made him develop a very good impression of Sima Jinkai. If he ever got the opportunity to do so, he really wanted to meet Sima Jinkai in real life. His golden dragon spear was a divine weapon, and anything that could improve a divine weapon was an extremely rare and brilliant opportunity. Unfortunately for him, Sima Jinkai was all the way over at the Southern Legion, so he didn't have time to go and seek him out. Perhaps if he had enough time following the conclusion of the competition, he could apply for some leave with Blood One and take Yue to visit the Southern Legion. He would also be able to see how Zheng Yu and Xiaoan were going as well. Wait a minute. Tang Wuling's body suddenly shuddered. The clash between his golden dragon spear and Sima Jinkai's dragon-slaying saber had taken place in the Star Battle Net. No one could take anything out of the Star Battle Net aside from battle experience. So how had his golden dragon spear become sharper in real life? That didn't make sense. With that in mind, Tang Wuling's brows furrowed tightly. It was undoubtedly the case that facing the dragon-slaying saber had allowed him to glean some of the secrets of his golden dragon spear, and those secrets could very likely impact just how powerful his golden dragon spear was going to become in the future. It could be said that the golden dragon spear was a part of his powers, and it was a very prominent part. If Tang Wuling were the golden dragon king, then the golden dragon spear would be the fangs of the golden dragon king. The sharper the fangs were, the more fearsome the golden dragon king's offensive prowess would be. But just how had the dragon-slaying saber managed to sharpen the golden dragon spear? Indeed, Tang Wuling was already convinced that the improvement his golden dragon spear had made stemmed from from the dragon-slaying saber, but he had no idea about the specific details behind this. It appeared that he would have to find a way to meet Sima Jinkai no matter what. If his dragon-slaying saber were also a divine weapon, then he would definitely be able to figure out what had happened once the two divine weapons came into contact with one another in real life. After making that decision, Tang Wuling switched on the sole television in his room. He very rarely watched television, and as Blood 9, his dormitory room appeared to be quite sparsely furnished, but all of the furniture that he had were of the highest quality. After flicking through a few channels, he quickly found what he was looking for. At the center of the Soul screen was a massive sports stadium, and not long after this, the countdown from 5 commenced. Tang Wuling was undoubtedly very familiar with this countdown. That's right, he was watching the live broadcast of the Star Battle Net Interfederation competition. This was a Soul Master battle, and the two participants were appraising one another from afar. One of them was extremely tall and broad with a muscle-bound body. The Star Battle Net made it impossible for one to glean the facial features of the participants, but his bulging muscles were quite clear for everyone to see. This man's figure was definitely extremely rare among normal people. He was over 250 centimeters tall, and his shoulders were at least twice as wide as those of the average person. His arms were completely bare, and the muscles on them were downright terrifying. A series of snake-like blood vessels were visible under the surface of his skin, presenting a rather harrowing sight to behold. Following the conclusion of the countdown, his hands abruptly balled up into tight fists, and spread his arms in a powerful motion, sending a massive shockwave erupting from his body. Boom! His entire body quickly expanded in size, and a layer of crimson color appeared over his skin. This wasn't the color of crimson flames. Instead, it resembled the color of blood, and this only made him appear even more terrifying. A layer of fine patterns had also appeared over his crimson skin. Tang Wuling's eyes narrowed slightly at the sight of these patterns, and golden light flashed through his pupils. This was a secret technique of the body sect. That's right, he was able to immediately identify that this hulking mountain of a man was currently using a secret technique of the body sect. As a direct disciple of the body sect master, how could he fail to recognize something like this? This was an extremely aggressive and powerful secret technique that required one to bathe in countless spirit items and spirit medicines. From the moment one was born, they had to bathe in a certain solution for 10 years. Don't make the mistake of thinking that bathing in spirit items would be an enjoyable experience. On the contrary, it was far more painful and torturous than the average person could imagine, and one had to experience this as an infant, so the agony would only be even further compounded. This type of body sect secret technique was known as the congenital body refinement method, and it was even more powerful than the cultivation method Tang Wuling had adopted. It had already been too late for Tang Wuling to use the congenital body refinement method, so Mu Yi used the most difficult acquired secret technique on him. It did enhance his body significantly, but it was still nowhere near the level of enhancement one would receive from the congenital body refinement method. Not only was the congenital secret method extremely painful, the amount of resources required to facilitate it was quite staggering. Even for a powerful sect like the body sect, it would take them around 100 years to gather a batch of spirit items required to enact the secret method once. And if the infant's body were unable to handle the process or they possessed insufficient mental fortitude, then the secret technique would fail, and the child would perish, while the spirit medicines were completely wasted. This congenital secret method was also the reason behind the body sect's steady decline. During the past 400 years, not even a single infant had managed to successfully endure this process. That was until this generation, where the secret method had finally been successfully implemented on the man on the screen. This was the senior disciple brother whom Tang Wuling had never met, and he was also Mu Yi's disciple. He had cultivated the congenital secret technique of the body sect from birth, and he was the future hope of the body sect. The entire sect was hoping to see him recover the former glory of the body sect. Unfortunately, with the inventions of battle armor, mechas, and all types of modern weapons, the powers of soul masters were no longer as important, and as such it would be very difficult for the body sect to make a resurgence on the back of one person. However, there was hope, at the very least. Mu Yi had once told Tang Wuling that when he had first taken Tang Wuling as his disciple, he was nurturing him to be the replacement for his senior disciple brother. If his senior disciple brother were to perish, at the very least, the body sect would still have a pure heir. The congenital secret method required one to bathe in spirit items for 10 years, and after that, they had to cultivate for more than 10 years to truly control their own body. If one could succeed, then they would automatically become the heir to the master of the body sect. Even though Tang Wuling's senior disciple brother had succeeded, he had heard from Mu Yi that this hadn't been a perfect success. He possessed extraordinary mental fortitude and aptitude, both of which were imperative to his success, but the only issue was that his brain didn't seem to work that well. To put it in simpler terms, he was very gullible and had certain personality flaws. Mu Yi had asked Tang Wuling to look after this senior disciple brother of his if he were to ever go out into the world. It was undoubtedly the case that his senior disciple brother had successfully cultivated the body sect's congenital secret method, and he was displaying an extremely high level of power. Tang Wuling was staring at the match taking place on the screen with rapt focus. He had to watch carefully as his senior disciple brother was most likely going to be his opponent in the grand final that was taking place the next day. That's right, the grand final of the Star Battle Net Interfederation competition was very likely going to be an internal body sect battle, and Tang Wuling knew that Mu Yi was most definitely in a very good mood right now. Chapter 1074. Even though Tang Wuling had been going to great lengths to conceal his abilities, those who were familiar with him would still be able to identify him, and his teacher was definitely no exception to this. Show me how powerful the congenital secret method of the body sect is. Senior disciple brother. On the screen in front of Tang Wuling, his senior disciple brother had already sprung into action. His hulking crimson figure advanced forward with a vicious aura emanating from his body, and every single step that he took was like a giant hammer blow on the competition platform, resulting in a string of violent booms. The name of Tang Wuling's senior disciple brother was Arahang, and there was a ferocious light shimmering within his flashing golden eyes. His aura was so powerful that it conjured up a massive humanoid projection behind him that was several dozens of meters tall. This was the first time that Tang Wuling had seen anyone else aside from himself with such enormous blood essence power. As expected of the only man to have successfully cultivated the body sect's congenital secret method in the past several centuries, it could be said that Arahang was a product of a century of accumulation from the body sect, and he was going to announce himself to the world during this competition. In ancient times, the body sect was one of the most powerful sects on the entire continent, and it was even able to contend with the likes of Shrek Academy and the Tang sect. However, due to the advancements of soul technology and the difficulty of cultivating the body sect's secret techniques, some of those techniques had been lost in the sands of time, and the body sect also gradually fell into obscurity. Now, they had finally been blessed with Arahang, who had successfully cultivated their congenital secret method, and the body sect was placing all of its eggs in one basket with him. The sect was going to give him its full support so he could gain enough influence on the continent and lead the body sect on a resurgence. Soul masters with body martial souls were very rare, and if the body sect couldn't recruit more disciples, the future would only become bleaker for them, and it wouldn't be impossible for the sect to disappear altogether someday. At this moment, Arahang's opponent was also undergoing a peculiar transformation. His eyes had turned green, and 8 soul rings, 2 purple and 6 black, rose up from beneath his feet before revolving around his body. At the same time, a layer of green scales appeared all over his skin, and his body swelled to over 3 meters tall while a layer of green energy appeared around him. Arahang was the trump card of the body sect, and he had the nickname of Strength King in this competition. The opponent that he was facing had the nickname of Jade King, and his martial soul was the crystalline Jade King. Among all of the remaining participants, Arahang didn't have the highest odds. In fact, his odds were even below Tang Wuling's, languishing down at dead last among the 4 semi-finalists. In contrast, the one with the highest odds was none other than this Jade King. The crystalline Jade King martial soul was a mutated martial soul that possessed an ancient bloodline. During ancient times, Kylans were even rarer than giant dragons, but their powers could be comparable to those of dragon kings. This Jade King had awakened a type of mutated Kylin bloodline, and his martial soul had been rated as the most powerful in the entire competition. At the same time, he had displayed extremely powerful combat prowess that was well above the rest of the field, and that was why he had the highest odds. This semi-final clash between Jade King and Strength King was undoubtedly going to be an extremely brutal encounter, and it garnered even more attention than the match between Tang Wuling and Sima Jinkai. After all, Jade King was participating in this match. Arahang was rushing toward Jade King, while the latter only took a single step forward. A green halo of light spread from beneath his feet, quickly expanding to cover half of the entire competition platform in the blink of an eye. His opponent was naturally also encompassed within the halo. Tang Wuling was immediately able to identify this as a domain. Furthermore, it was an innate domain that was similar to his violent golden dragon domain, which meant that it came with his martial soul and wasn't a soul skill of his. Had this Jade King already attained a domain? How was Arahang going to battle such a powerful opponent? Sure enough, as soon as Arahang rushed into the domain, he immediately seemed to have lost his sense of direction and charged off to the side. The illusionary Jade domain was similar to a spiritual control domain that could confuse and control one's opponent to a very high degree. After Arahang rushed into the domain, Jade King's body swayed before splitting up into 3 clones that rushed toward Arahang from different directions. At this moment, Arahang launched his fist through the air, triggering a violent deafening boom. At the same time, everything within a radius of several dozens of meters was instantly enshrouded under a burst of reddish golden light. His fist naturally struck nothing more than empty air, and a perplexed look appeared on his face. Right at this moment, Jade King's 3 projections appeared around him in 3 different directions before unleashing gentle palm strikes toward him. As their palms traveled soundlessly through the air, their hands took on a glittering and translucent green color, making them appear as if they had turned into chunks of green jade. Thump, thump, thump. 3 dull thumps rang out in unison as the 3 green palms struck Arahang's body at almost the exact same moment. Arahang shuddered, and the places on his body that had been struck quickly turned green. Furthermore, the green color began to spread over his entire body, and at the same time, Jade King's 6th soul ring had lit up. It was quite clear that these gentle-looking palms weren't as simple as they appeared. Was this forced crystallization? What a terrifying attack. Tang Wuolin was quite stunned to see this. This was clearly an attack unleashed through a combination of his martial soul and bloodline power. It was able to crystallize his opponent's body, and once his opponent's body was completely crystallized, they would inevitably perish. However, Arahang didn't panic as everyone expected. His massive body seemed to have abruptly stiffened, immediately following which a strange sound rang out from his body. Lub dub, lub dub, lub dub. This was clearly a powerful heartbeat, and even though Tang Wuolin was only watching this match through a soul screen, he could clearly feel his own heart rate accelerating along with Arahang's heartbeat. Right at this moment, an extremely astonishing turn of events unfolded. Jade King's body clearly stiffened momentarily, and countless agonized howls suddenly rang out from the spectator stands. Plumes of blood mist exploded one after another as large groups of spectators were felled like crops during a harvest. What the hell was happening? All of a sudden, countless bursts of reddish golden light erupted from Arahang's crystallized body. He abruptly turned around to appraise Jade King, and golden light erupted from within his eyes before shining directly upon Jade King's head. Jade King stumbled back in retreat, and his illusionary Jade domain instantly dissipated. At the same time, Arahang's fist was also flying toward him. There were still 3 Jade Kings on the competition platform, but for some reason, after the powerful heartbeat sound had appeared, 2 of the clones had become illusionary and transparent. So Arahang was naturally attacking his true body. Jade King just barely managed to raise his arms as he tried to activate his 7th soul skill. However, right at this moment, all of the green light around Arahang's body disappeared, and he abruptly stomped his right foot onto the ground. A violent boom rang out, and reddish golden light suddenly erupted from Jade King's body. A dazzling golden soul ring emerged from beneath Arahang's feet, and it only had a diameter of around 10 meters, but that was enough to encompass Jade King within it as well. At this moment, Jade King had only just managed to raise his arms to defend himself against Arahang's oncoming fist. A killing projection appeared behind him, but it only appeared for an instant before it was completely pulverized. Boom. Chapter 1075. The unspeakably brutal punch sent Jade King flying through the air, and Arahang's body swayed before he caught up to his opponent, as if he had used instantaneous teleportation. He then grabbed onto Jade King's shoulders and hurtled down from above while rotating rapidly like a spinning top. The 2 of them crashed heavily down onto the ground, and the golden patterns on his body spread to Jade King's body. A string of resounding booms rang out, causing the entire competition platform to tremor violently. Tang Wuolin looked on in a completely flabbergasted manner. He already had very high expectations for this senior disciple brother of his, but even he didn't think that Arahang would be this powerful. He had watched some of Arahang's past match footage, and he had displayed a lot of power during those previous matches, but not power to this degree. It was undoubtedly the case that he had held back to hide his true power prior to this. Following the emergence of the powerful heartbeat, he was unveiling the true power of the body sex congenital secret method. Tang Wuolin wore a completely stunned look on his face. It could be said that Jade King had suffered a very tragic loss. He had definitely reviewed Arahang's past competition footage as well, but he had completely misjudged Arahang's power. That string of transformations was most likely the second awakening of the secret method. No, the second awakening should have already happened when his body had first expanded in size. That much was apparent to both Tang Wuolin and Jade King. So what was that powerful heartbeat that appeared thereafter? Could it be a third awakening of his body martial soul? Was this an unprecedented third awakening? It had to be. It could be said that among all of the spectators, Tang Wuolin was definitely the one who understood the most about the secret techniques of the body sect, so he was able to more clearly sense the changes in Arahang's body sect abilities. It was no wonder that Jade King had been defeated so quickly. There was no way that he could have anticipated that Arahang still had such an ability. Not only did Arahang's third awakening render Jade King's attacks completely ineffective, it also allowed him to gain extremely fearsome offensive prowess and explosive power. Even with this newfound knowledge of Arahang's full power, would he be able to face him and come out on top? Tang Wuolin took a deep breath, and he found that he was unable to give an affirmative answer to his own question, as expected of the senior disciple brother whom Yu Yi had placed such high hopes on. However, the more powerful Arahang was, the more excited Tang Wuolin became. Only by facing powerful opponents would he be able to better tap into his own latent potential and reap the most benefit from these matches. At this point, the match on the screen was already over. Jade King possessed extremely powerful defensive prowess, but Arahang didn't give him any chances at all to turn the tables, unleashing a barrage of devastating attacks to completely destroy Jade King and end the match. However, Tang Wuolin didn't look down on Jade King because of this. He had lost this match due to a lack of understanding of Arahang's abilities. His martial soul had been rated as the most powerful in the entire competition, and he also had the highest odds. He definitely hadn't reached this stage of the competition through dumb luck. That was for sure. He was going to have a bright future ahead. Perhaps Tang Wuolin would get a chance to meet him someday. Tang Wuolin reviewed the footage 3 times, and every time he saw Arahang begin to undergo his transformation, it evoked within his mind the imagery of an erupting volcano. That powerful heartbeat indicated that he had already cultivated the body sex secret technique of his heart. All of a sudden, a thought occurred to him. What if he could also cultivate this congenital secret method? If he were to succeed, wouldn't that make him better equipped to handle the influxes of energy from breaking his golden Dragon King seals? The implementation of the secret method required a huge quantity of spirit items, but he didn't need all that. His current concern was that his golden Dragon King seals contained too much energy for his own body to handle. He was going to ask Yu Yi later down the track if he could teach him the congenital secret technique. Even if he couldn't successfully cultivate it, he would at least be able to reference it for his future body refinement. Overall, Tang Wuolin was grateful toward his 18 golden Dragon King seals. After all, there was no way that he would have been able to attain this level of power at such a young age without them. But at the same time, the 18 seals also presented him with a massive threat. Under the current circumstances, it appeared that he wouldn't have to worry about them for at least the next 3 years. But what would happen after that? He had to accelerate in his cultivation progression, but most importantly, he had to progressively improve his own physical tolerance. He had already accumulated such a strong foundation before breaking the 10th seal, yet he had still been afflicted with such intense agony. Would he be able to forge a foundation that was just as strong prior to breaking his next seal? At this point in time, that appeared to be a very difficult task. As such, he had to find more methods to cultivate his own body, or secure some spirit items that would be extremely beneficial to strengthening his body. The Federation announced that the Star Battle.net was going to be shut down for 3 days for maintenance so that it could handle the intensity of the grand final match. It was undoubtedly the case that the Federation had made losses on both of the semi-final matches when they had been anticipating massive profits instead, and this was simply due to the fact that the system's tolerance capacity was too low. In fact, even the Star Cabins were experiencing some issues. Following his semi-final match, Tang Wuolin could feel that some of the parts within his Star Cabin were already overheating. He was going to be facing the most powerful opponent in the grand final, so he would definitely have to fight with all his might, and it would be a massive joke if the Star Battle.net were to break down. On top of that, it would undoubtedly cause irreparable damage to the Star Battle.net's reputation. As such, the federal government quickly made a series of adjustments. Firstly, they were implementing temporary upgrades on the Star Battle.net to ensure the successful completion of the grand final matches at all costs. Secondly, the developers and relevant experts had released a detailed detailed statement, explaining why such a situation had taken place. They were making it very clear that nothing was wrong with the battle.net itself. It was simply the case that the participants were too powerful. Even though they were only 2-word battle armor masters, their powers had already far exceeded that of even the average 3-word battle armor master. For example, during the clash between Jade King and Strength King, neither of them had donned their suits of battle armor before the match was decided, yet a large proportion of the spectators were still killed, and that was sufficient testament to their extraordinary powers. That's right, Jade King didn't even get a chance to release his suit of 2-word battle armor before he was completely destroyed by that explosive and sustained barrage of attacks from Arahang. When there was still one day left before the grand finale, Tang Wuling received the brand new star cabin sent to the Blood God Legion by the Federation. Compared to his previous star cabin, this one was over 3 times larger, and it appeared to be more intricate and resolute. It was undoubtedly the case that there was no way such massive star cabins could become prevalent fixtures, but in order to ensure the smooth progression of the grand final, the federal government had no choice but to send this fortified star cabin to Tang Wuling for his final 2 matches. After Tang Wuling finished testing out his new star cabin, Blood One asked, "The grand finals are about to begin. Is there anything on your mind?" Tang Wuling replied, "Not really. I just want to keep becoming more powerful during these matches. If these matches were taking place in real life, I would be able to make greater improvements, but the star battle.net allows everyone to fight without any inhibition. It has to be said that this is a monumental piece of technology that is very much worthy of widespread implementation." Blood One nodded and said, "The Federation has already made up its mind to promote the star battle.net. The star battle.net and space exploration are the 2 major areas that the federal researchers and developers will be working toward in the future." Tang Wuling's heart stirred slightly upon hearing this. Space exploration? Would you happen to know what level the Federation has reached in that field? Blood One replied, "They've made a few breakthroughs, but it'll still take a very long time before they can develop the vital pieces of technology. Most importantly, the continent is running very low on resources, and that will have a very severe negative impact on sustained research and development." So, Blood One's voice trailed off here, and Tang Wuling's brows furrowed slightly. Indeed, after so many years of development, many of the Douluo continent's mineral resources were quickly dwindling. Battle armor, mechas, and soul technology all required vast amounts of resources as a foundation to facilitate continued research and development, but the continent's resources were finite. Constant exploitation of these resources by humans was really beginning to take its toll. At present, human technology was still nowhere near advanced enough to facilitate voyages into outer space to search for resources, so they could only set their sights within the Douluo star. The Douluo Federation already had sufficient military power under its belt, and it had been eyeing the 2 neighboring continents for a very long time. However, the circumstances surrounding those 2 continents were rather special, so they weren't willing to attack at this point and were lying in wait. Following the release of the star battle.net, the Federation had clearly taken another extremely significant stride in its technological development, so it was difficult to predict when war was going to be waged. Chapter 1076. Even though there was no clear evidence, there was no doubt that the peace-loving Shrek Academy had always been an obstacle to the Federation in its endeavor to instigate wars. As such, in a sense, the destruction of Shrek Academy was a good thing for those who belonged to the evil faction. At the very least, there was less resistance against their cause. Even though organizations like the Spirit Pagoda were also neutral, they weren't a peace-loving entity like Shrek Academy, and the Battle God Hall was under the direct control of the Federation. So if war were to ever break out, they were going to be the Federation's most powerful weapon. Blood One turned to Tang Wuling. "What does this make you think of?" "It makes me think of a war for resources." Tang Wuling replied without any hesitation. Blood One sighed. "That seems almost inevitable at this point." Tang Wuling's brows furrowed tightly. "A war is going to kill so many innocent people and destroy so many homes." Blood One said in an indifferent voice, "Do you think the federal government has only been proposing going to war for the past few years? They began proposing this idea many years ago, and it never became a reality due to vehement opposition from the Dou faction led by Shrek Academy. Now, it's really hard to say what's going to happen." Tang Wuling sighed. "I just want to revive the academy so its ethos can continue to be passed down." Blood One shook his head. "No, the scope of your responsibility is not limited to this. I originally also thought that this would be enough, but in reality, it's far from enough. Do you know why?" Tang Wuling shook his head. Blood One continued, "Our Blood God Legion has been constantly guarding the abyssal passageway for over 6,000 years, not allowing the abyssal plane to invade our Douluo continent. The greatest wish of one generation of Blood God Legion soldiers after another is to be able to completely eradicate the threat of the abyssal plane. However, no one in the past 6,000 years has been able to achieve this, and no one has even managed to propose a good course of action. All of that changed when you showed up. Your golden dragon spear could well be a divine weapon for us when it comes to opposing the abyssal plane. If you can eradicate the threat of the abyssal plane, then you will be the true hero of the Blood God Legion and the entire Federation. So you have to do more. No one can teach you exactly what to do, but as your senior, I can help you in every way that I'm capable of. You will need to control your own future, but I firmly believe that you'll accomplish greater things than anyone could ever imagine." Eradicate the threat of the abyssal plane? Tang Wuling raised an eyebrow upon hearing this. He hadn't completely understood the meaning behind Blood One's words, but he still nodded in response. The grand final finally arrived. Following a series of emergency damage control, the general public's attention was finally drawn back to the grand final match that was about to commence. This was the grand final of the Soul Master battles. It was a matchup between Golden Dragon King and Strength King, and it was undoubtedly going to be an extremely spectacular match. Even though lethal incidents had taken place in both of the semi-final matches, no one could actually die in the Star Battle.net, after all. Furthermore, this was a grand final, and the federal government had guaranteed that no dangers would arise during the course of this match. Otherwise, the government was going to be offering large sums of money as compensation, so the spectator stands for this match was still completely packed. On top of that, the viewership for this match had also set a new record. Tang Wuling was seated in his resting suite with his legs crossed, meditating to prime himself into the best possible condition. His golden dragon spear rested across his knees, and his spirit, aura, and intent were very naturally elevated to the very peak. Compared to his match against Sima Jinkai, he was actually a bit more relaxed for this grand final. Perhaps the fact that he was going to be facing his senior disciple brother has alleviated a lot of his nerves, and he was more so looking forward to facing the powers of the congenital secret method in order to verify his own body refinement method. Tang Wuling's body refinement used his Golden Dragon King bloodline as a foundation before adopting the cultivation method of the body sect. At present, there weren't many people in this entire world who would dare to say that they possessed a more powerful physical constitution than him. In particular, as his powers had increased and after he broke his 10th Golden Dragon King seal, his body had become even more powerful. Only the senior disciple brother of his, whom he was about to face, struck him with a sense of inferiority when it came to his physical constitution. However, this battle would allow him to ascertain the gap between himself and his senior disciple brother, and he was going to treat this as a learning experience. As such, he was regarding this battle more so as a sparring match against his senior disciple brother, so the end result didn't matter as much to him. Through his communication with Blood One, he could sense that Blood One didn't really care much about his final placing in the competition. Either, he simply wanted Tang Wuling to learn and grow as much as he could through the course of this competition. The fact that he progressed to the grand final in both disciplines meant that he had already guaranteed himself participation in all of the matches that he could possibly compete in, and that was enough. As such, in this grand final, he wanted to enjoy the contest more than anything else. Of course, that didn't mean that he wasn't going to do his best. On the contrary, he was going to display his full power to see just how far he could go. After all, there were already fewer and fewer opponents against whom he could unleash his full power and still encounter ample resistance. He had made another breakthrough in his soul power the night before, progressing to rank 66. This speed of progression was quite astonishing, even to himself. One had to realize that these rapid improvements were being made while he was also forging an extremely stable foundation. The match is about to begin. Golden Dragon King. A delightful and delicate voice rang out. Tang Wuling slowly opened his eyes before striding out of the room with his golden dragon spear in his hand. The gate leading to the competition platform lay up ahead, and when Tang Wuling passed his gaze toward it, then looked down at the path beneath his feet, he was somehow suddenly struck by a hint of enlightenment. This was a very abstract feeling that he couldn't seem to grab onto, but it was unspeakably profound. He raised his golden dragon spear slightly, and the light shining from the competition venue reflected off the spear as a golden hue. The direction that his spear was pointing in was the path that he had to advance toward. He stepped forward and was immediately met with deafening cheers. Countless voices were chanting Golden Dragon King and Strength King. In the distance, the man mountain that was Arahang had also appeared on the other side of the competition venue. The two of them looked at one another from afar. Due to the system's concealment effect, neither of them could see one another's expressions, but Arahang raised his arm and gave Tang Wuling a thumbs up to express his feelings. Tang Wuling also raised his golden dragon spear as acknowledgement. Miu Yu was standing silently in front of a soul screen. The screen was very close to him, so close that he could even hear the faint electric current fluctuations from the Sol screen. Divine blacksmith Zhen Huan and Tang Wuling's other teacher, Saint Blacksmith Mu Chen, was sitting not far behind him. Compared to Mu Yi, they were clearly a lot more calm and collected. Mu Chen picked up his teacup and took a sip before asking in a low voice, "Is he all right?" Zhen Hua replied, "He's okay. He's just too excited. The body sector's been on a constant decline for the past several centuries, and that's naturally taken a great toll on him as the current sect master. The Star Battle Net Inter-Federation competition is a competition between the elite soul masters across the entire federation, yet the grand final is a match between his two disciples. You can only imagine his excitement right now." Zhen Hua paused momentarily before yelling to Mu Yi, "Oi, you're not gonna cry, are you? Piss off." Mu Yi grumbled in reply. However, Zhen Hua could clearly hear that his voice did suggest that he was about to burst into tears. "They're both your disciples. Who do you think is going to win?" Zhen Hua asked. Mu Yi was silent for a long while before finally replying in a low voice. "It will be very difficult for Wuling to win. It looks like he still hasn't reached the soul stage level yet. His bloodline is more powerful than that of Ruang's, but the congenital secret method of our body sect is able to amend all bloodline imperfections, thereby enhancing one's body to a supermaximal degree. Ruang has been cultivating arduously for many years. If he unleashes his congenital secret method to the height of its powers, even I won't be able to defeat him in a short time unless I use my battle armor." Chapter 1077. I have to disagree. My nephew disciple's forte lays in his ability to create miracles. Zhen Hua countered with a smile. Mu Yi turned around with a surprised look on his face. The film of tears over his eyes had already been evaporated by him using his soul power. "You think Wuling can win?" Zhen Hua shrugged in response. "Why not? We've all watched Wuling's past matches. How much of his power do you think he's used in the previous rounds? What was that final clash with Saber Demon in the last match all about? Saber Demon withdrew under inexplicable circumstances, but do you think he threw the match for Wuling's sake? Compared to that Saber Demon, do you think Arahang is more powerful?" Mu Yi said in a proud manner that Saber Demon may have attained a Saber soul already, but the congenital secret method of our body sect transforms one's body into their soul, so Ruang is still more powerful than that Saber Demon. Zhen Hua continued, "Even so, he won't be more powerful by much, right?" Mu Yi faltered slightly upon hearing this. Zhen Hua was right. Arahang had the lowest odds among all four of the semi-finalists, while Wild Gale Saber Demon Sima Jinkai had the second highest odds. Of course, this was a result of Arahang hiding his true power, but that Saber Demon was definitely no slouch. If Tang Wulin could even defeat Sima Jinkai, then a faint smile appeared on Zhen Hua's face. "Don't you think that Wulin has been constantly progressing at a rapid rate during the past half a year? He has made it to this grand final on the merit of his own power, and if you ask me, this is going to be a very fierce match, one that Arahang may not emerge victorious from." All of a sudden, Mu Yi burst into boisterous laughter. "So what? They're both my disciples. Both of them will continue to pass on the teachings of our body sect." Zhen Hua and Mu Chen both remained silent. Indeed, Mu Yi had all the reasons in the world to be excited. The two combatants who had made it to the grand final were both disciples of his. Regardless of who secured the final victory in the end, this was still one of the happiest moments of Mu Yi's entire life. He was still of the opinion that Arahang was slightly more powerful, but he also wanted to see if his other disciple could truly create another miracle as Zhen Hua suggested he would. On the competition platform, the two combatants were appraising one another from afar with serious expressions. Tang Wuling's golden dragon spear was shimmering with faint light, and even though he couldn't see Arahang's facial features, his hulking body still gave off a very intimidating aura. "This is the grand final. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, begin." As the countdown commenced, a referee descended onto the competition platform. He glanced at two combatants before waving a hand through the air as a commencement signal. Tang Wulin and Arahang both sprang into action almost in complete unison. Arahang stepped forward with his right foot, and an explosive boom rang out from his body as his muscles began to bulge. Witnessing it through a screen wasn't as immersive of an experience, but seeing Arahang now, Tang Wulin could clearly sense a terrifying vicious aura surging toward him from Arahang's body. Even though they were separated by a distance of several hundred meters, he could still clearly sense this devastating aura. In the face of his senior disciple brother, he felt as if he were appraising a humanoid great beast. It was no wonder that Jade King had immediately released his domain without any hesitation. He had virtually been forced to do so in the face of Arahang's intimidating aura. In response to the external pressure weighing down on Tang Wulin, his dragon core began to beat faster of its own accord. With every single compression, powerful blood essence fluctuations were pumped throughout his entire body, and a layer of faint golden light appeared around him. At the same time, he unleashed his golden dragon body, and golden dragon scales appeared all over the surface of his skin. Neither of them immediately released their suits of battle armor, and they were charging toward one another in their base forms. Tang Wulin pointed his golden dragon spear forward and stomped his left foot heavily into the ground, accelerating drastically as a result. Arahang also did the same. Their speeds both stemmed from their respective absolute strength, so speed wasn't actually their forte. Even so, the instantaneous explosive force that they were able to generate still propelled them forward faster than the vast majority of agility attack system soul masters of the same caliber. The two figures almost instantly met at the center of the competition platform. Arahang let loose a thunderous roar as he launched his right fist through the air. A ball of reddish golden light exploded violently like a cannon blast, stunning all of the spectators present. A burst of scorching heat surged toward Tang Wulin. This wasn't actual heat, but instead, the terrifying power that one was able to generate after their blood essence reached a certain degree of power. So one could unleash such powerful explosive force with their blood essence alone once it became powerful enough. This senior disciple brother of his most likely really did possess a body as powerful as that of a great beast. These thoughts flashed through Tang Wulin's mind in an instant, and instead of thrusting his golden dragon spear forward, it suddenly disappeared from his grasp. At the same time, he flapped his golden wings vigorously before clenching his right golden dragon claw into a tight fist and unleashing a punch in retaliation. These instantaneous changes that Tang Wulin had made seemed to be quite simple, but the timing involved, as well as his bodily control and judgment of the match situation were all close to perfection. Arahang's attack encompassed a very large area, but it was undoubtedly the case that there was one point on his fist that was the most powerful. As such, he would naturally be striving to aim that most powerful point at Tang Wulin. However, never did he think that Tang Wulin would put away his most powerful weapon at a time like this. The golden dragon spear was close to 5 meters in length, and the fact that it had suddenly disappeared naturally meant that the most powerful point of Arahang's attack had struck nothing but empty air. Right at this moment, Tang Wulin flapped his golden dragon wings to instantly close the rest of the distance between them, and his fist struck Arahang's right as the power of Arahang's attack was running out. Just a simple change had completely thrown off Arahang's rhythm, allowing Tang Wulin to avoid the full brunt of his attack. Boom! A resounding boom akin to the explosion of a high-grade soul missile rang out at the center of the competition platform, and bright reddish golden light instantly encompassed a diameter of over 50 meters, enshrouding Tang Wulin and Arahang within it as well. Immediately thereafter, two figures flew backward out of the explosion of reddish golden light. Tang Wulin was constantly swaying his own body as he flew through the air in order to better arrest his own momentum. Yet on the other side, Arahang simply flew backward in a balanced manner, only arresting his own momentum after he crashed into the protective barrier. Both of them then began to shake out their arms at almost the exact same moment. Neither of them had managed to gain the upper hand during this clash. Perhaps it was due to the fact that they were disciple brothers, but neither of them used any soul skills or special abilities during that clash. It was nothing more than a clash of pure strength. At the time, Tang Wulin felt as if he were about to be devoured by a tsunami. The devastating blood essence fluctuations radiating from Arahang's body made it feel as if he were a miniature sun. Was this the power of the congenital secret method? To think that it could elevate one's bloodline power to such an insane level, this was downright terrifying. Arahang was also quite astonished. He discovered that Tang Wulin possessed inferior blood essence compared to his own, but there was an extremely regal aura in Tang Wulin's bloodline that struck him with a sense of pressure and affected his performance. Furthermore, Tang Wulin had stowed away his golden dragon spear at the last moment, and his golden dragon claw possessed a crushing special effect, so he had no choice but to divert some of his power to protect his own fist. Thus, he was unable to gain the upper hand during that clash, but even so, both sides were able to accurately gauge one another's strength as a result of that exchange. In terms of strength, Tang Wulin was indeed inferior to Arahang, and not just by a little. He was only able to just barely match Arahang during that clash through the use of his golden dragon body, golden dragon claws, and some battle tactics. Arahang was the perfect epitome of explosive strength, and not only was Tang Wulin stunned by his his power, he was even more intrigued by the congenital secret method. Nice. Arahang let loose an explosive cry before bursting into boisterous laughter. His body swayed, and a resounding boom erupted from the ground beneath his feet. In the next instant, he appeared directly in front of Tang Wuling before launching both of his fists straight toward Tang Wuling's shoulders. Tang Wuling was indeed inferior to him in terms of strength, but ever since he'd successfully cultivated the congenital secret method, no one had been able to withstand such a clash of pure strength against him. The feeling of encountering someone with ample strength to resist him filled him with elation. Even Yu Yu was very reluctant to engage in direct clashes of strength with him, and now, he had finally found a suitable opponent. How could he not be ecstatic? Tang Wuling took a deep breath before slowly thrusting his palms forward. A deafening dragon's roar immediately rang out as he unleashed his golden dragon shocks the heavens. Boom. Another violent boom rang out, and Arahang was sent flying backward for several dozens of meters, but Tang Wuling plummeted straight from the sky before slamming into the ground amid another resounding boom. The spectators were all completely flabbergasted. Every single one of them could feel adrenaline pumping through their veins. This type of battle was so brutal and manly. There was no technique to speak of. They were simply fighting fire with fire. Chapter 1078. Arahang was feeling very elated, as was Tang Wuling. Ever since he'd absorbed the energy from his 10th Golden Dragon King seal, he had yet to encounter an opponent who could match him in strength. On this occasion, Arahang's strength completely dominated his, and only against an opponent like this could he completely unleash his full power. As such, even though he had already been forced onto the back foot after just the first two clashes, he felt as if the Golden Dragon King bloodline had been completely ignited within his own body. He let loose a loud roar as he flapped his golden dragon wings vigorously, propelling him up into the air. At the same time, he unleashed his golden dragon takes flight, transforming into a giant dragon that ascended toward the heavens. Powerful Golden Dragon King blood essence fluctuations erupted from his dragon core in a frenzy, and the giant golden dragon projection instantly swelled to several dozens of meters in size. In the eyes of the ordinary spectators, it looked as if he had just released his martial soul true body. The first, second, and third of Arahang 8 soul rings lit up at once, and his body swelled in size once again while the golden patterns on his skin seemed to have sprung to life. A massive projection appeared behind him, and it was identical to his appearance, except it was over 100 meters tall, and an indescribable sense of mountainous pressure began to weigh down the massive golden dragon. He abruptly raised his right hand, and a peculiar turn of events unfolded. His fist suddenly swelled to a diameter of around 3 meters in the blink of an eye, and it was swung toward the golden dragon's head like a massive warhammer. This was the power of the body sex secret technique. After successfully cultivating the body sex congenital secret method, every single part of his body had become almighty weapons. That was the most powerful ability of those from the body sect. Boom. The golden dragon roared, and Arahang's entire body shattered violently. Tang Wuling was slammed back down onto the ground again, and when his feet came into contact with the surface of the competition platform, a massive crater was blasted into the ground. Nice. Tang Wuling was also starting to feel the adrenaline rush. He flapped his golden dragon wings once again, and violent fluctuations erupted from his soul core and dragon core, producing a layer of bluish golden light around his body. It was very clear to him that if he were to only use his strength and golden dragon king bloodline, he would be no match for the power of Arahang's body sect congenital secret method. If he didn't use his blood soul fusion skills, he would have no chance at all. Furthermore, he could tell that Arahang was still holding back. Judging from the continuous barrage of attacks he had unleashed to completely dismantle Jade King, he could be doing the same thing to Tang Wuling, and the fact that he wasn't pressing his advantage was already a sign that he wasn't fighting at his full power. However, Tang Wuling didn't want to face a strength king who wasn't going all out. A thunderous dragon's roar of fury and indignation rang out as his golden dragon spear reappeared in his hand. At the same time, his eyes also turned into a golden color. A massive golden dragon head appeared within the deep crater, and a layer of bluish golden light emerged alongside a series of blue silver emperor vines within the golden dragon head. His aura was originally being dominated, but it instantly swelled and erupted upward in retaliation, matching and even surpassing Arahang's enormous aura. This was the first time that Tang Wuling had used his golden dragon roar to elevate his own aura. In the next instant, a massive golden dragon that was shimmering with bluish golden light erupted upward. This was his blood soul fusion skill. Blue emperor dragon shocks the heavens. Arahang burst into boisterous laughter as his body abruptly compressed inward to only around 3 meters tall before taking on a golden hue. He then abruptly plummeted directly toward Tang Wuling. This was the second awakening of the body sex congenital secret method. Boom, boom, boom. A string of resounding booms rang out through the air. The entire competition platform was quaking violently, and powerful halos of light were radiating from the epicenter of the clashes. All of the spectators were completely dumbfounded. Was this really only a battle between two word battle armor masters? Even titled Douluos may not be able to trigger such enormous energy fluctuations. The protective barrier over the competition platform was swaying violently, and both Tang Wuling and Arahang separated at the same time. When they reappeared, both of them had already donned their suits of two-word battle armor. Arahang's suit of battle armor was crimson in color with lavish golden patterns, and it strongly resembled an enlarged suit of his muscles. The helmet that he was wearing bore the appearance of a beastly head with tusks protruding from it, while Tang Wuling was naturally in his usual suit of dragon moon battle armor. In contrast with last time, Tang Wuling wasn't slammed back down onto the ground. Instead, both of them were hovering in midair and intently appraising one another. The wings on Arahang's suit of battle armor were larger than Tang Wuling's dragon wings, and there was a layer of crimson light over those wings, giving them a very menacing and intimidating appearance. Through the use of his blood soul fusion skill, Tang Wuling was finally able to bridge the gap between them somewhat. Arahang was also quite stunned by what had just happened. Tang Wuling's soul fluctuations were clearly inferior to his, but during that last clash, the power displayed by Tang Wuling had clearly exceeded his current upper limit. How had he accomplished this? He had been cultivating the body sex congenital secret method from birth, whereas Tang Wuling had been educated in Shrek Academy, so his understanding of other types of martial souls naturally wasn't as in-depth as Tang Wuling's knowledge in this area. Tang Wuling raised his golden dragon spear and completely immersed himself in his own spear intent. Bursts of dragon's roars rang out as his bloodline surged within his body. Golden light shimmered from the surface of his dragon moon battle armor, and each and every rich dragon scale on the suit of battle armor was quite dazzling to behold. It was undoubtedly the case that Tang Wuling's appearance was far more appealing among the two, and after a brief stunned stupor, all of the spectators erupted into raucous cheers. The vast majority of them were chanting the name of Golden Dragon King, and the entire competition venue was filled with an atmosphere of frenetic excitement. I'm gonna go all out now, so you better brace yourself, junior disciple brother, Arahang chuckled, and just as Tang Wuling was pausing to process this, the same sound that had appeared during Arahang's battle against Jade King rang out once again. Lub dub, lub dub, lub dub. Arahang's chest began to rise and fall violently, and the sound of a powerful heartbeat immediately rang out all of the raucous cheers from the spectator stands. Light flashed through Tang Wuling's eyes, and he almost instantly unleashed a golden dragon roar as an automatic response. He had been waiting for this from Arahang, and he knew that when this heartbeat sound appeared, it indicated that Arahang's combat prowess was going to be raised to its limit. Upon careful observation, Tang Wuling could clearly see that Arahang's seventh soul ring had rippled slightly when that heartbeat sound first appeared. A layer of fine golden patterns then appeared over the soul ring. Was this heartbeat a manifestation of his martial soul true body? Tang Wuling was instantly enlightened. It was no wonder that Arahang's heartbeat could become so powerful. His deafening heartbeat had a disorienting effect, and what was even more fearsome was that it could influence one's bloodline fluctuations. The cheers from the spectator stand suddenly disappeared. The Star Battle.net had undoubtedly cut off all sounds to avoid any further casualties resulting from this violent heartbeat. The golden dragon roar and the thunderous heartbeat intertwined while Tang Wuling's entire body was enshrouded within a massive golden dragon head. At the same time, a huge purple tulip silently blossomed behind the gigantic golden dragon head, devouring heaven and earth. All of the energy particles in the air converged toward Tang Wuling in a frenzy. He didn't dare to hold back at all at a time like this. Under the effect of his devouring heaven and earth, his own power also swelled drastically, and a layer of bluish golden light immediately surfaced around the giant golden dragon head manifested from his golden dragon roar. The layer of bluish golden light radiated outward, and a sense of soul was immediately injected into the golden dragon roar, allowing the blood essence fluctuations within Tang Wuling's body to avoid the effect of Arahang's heartbeat. Chapter 1079. He had also cultivated the secret techniques of the body sect, and at the same time, he possessed the almighty Golden Dragon King bloodline, and both of those factors had minimized the effect that Arahang's powerful heartbeat had on him. Arahang's body flashed through the air, and he launched his right fist forward with devastating power. His body didn't expand any further, but there was a peculiar aura emanating from him, as if he were a super soul missile that had been compressed to an extreme degree. In the past, Tang Wulin had almost lost his life to the ninth grade soul missile, and it was Gu Yue who had saved him. Now, he was experiencing the same feeling as he had when that ninth grade soul missile had exploded right before him. He thrust his Golden Dragon Spear forward amid his Blue Emperor Golden Dragon roar, unleashing his Blue Emperor Golden Dragon shocks the heavens once again. However, due to the enhancements of his devouring heaven and earth, his Blue Emperor Golden Dragon shocks the heavens was clearly more powerful than the previous one. His spear intent erupted forth, and the dazzling platinum spear projection hurtled forth like the fangs of a giant dragon. A layer of bluish golden light instantly appeared over the body of the massive dragon, which was attempting to devour Arahang whole. Right at this moment, Arahang's eyes suddenly widened, and there was even light flowing out of the corners of his eyes. Lub-dub. Arahang suddenly opened his mouth amid the sound of his powerful heartbeat before letting loose an almighty roar toward Tang Wulin's Golden Dragon shocks the heavens. Roar. In the face of the enormous sound waves unleashed by that thunderous roar, the energy fluctuations emanating from the Golden Dragon shocks the heavens decreased sharply by around a third. Immediately thereafter, Arahang rushed toward the Blue Emperor Dragon shocks the heavens with nothing more than his body as his weapon. Boom. Tang Wulin was sent flying in the wake of the clash, and after the Blue Emperor Dragon shocks the heavens vanished, even his Dragon Moon battle armor was beginning to emit a string of high-pitched screeching sounds from the immense strain it was having to endure. If Arahang had been like an erupting volcano before, then in his current form, he was like a scorching sun descending from the heavens. His scorching bloodline fluctuations made Tang Wulin feel as if his internal organs had been set alight, and it was as if his blood essence fluctuations were being evaporated in the face of Arahang's scintillating aura. At the same time, his dragon core clearly began to beat more vigorously. Only when facing Arahang for himself could he truly comprehend just how fearsome Arahang was when in full flight. Jade King may have suffered a loss against Arahang before he had a chance to unleash most of his powers, but even if that hadn't been the case, he would have most likely been defeated anyway. It was no wonder that Jade King didn't even get a chance to retaliate during that battle. Just as these thoughts were flashing through Tang Wulin's mind, Arahang's body flashed, and he appeared right in front of Tang Wulin. He was clearly not going to give him any opportunity to catch his breath on this occasion. He clenched his right hand into a tight fist before sending it hurtling directly toward Tang Wulin's chest. There was no technique to speak of. He was merely exerting pure domination over Tang Wulin with his absolute speed and absolute strength. In this critical situation, Tang Wulin instantly activated his violent Golden Dragon domain without any hesitation. A golden halo proliferated from his body, and at the same time, his Golden Dragon spear vanished before he also lashed out with his right hand. A massive set of Blue Emperor Golden Dragon annihilation claws appeared before flying through the air. A violent boom rang out from the resulting clash. The Blue Emperor Golden Dragon annihilation claws combined his Blue Silver Emperor, Golden Dragon Dread claws, and Golden Dragon annihilation claws, as well as the enhancements from his devouring heaven and earth. Yet he was still unable to nullify the force of Arahang's punch. His fist was like an unstoppable object that would plow its way through any defenses or attacks. It tore through Tang Wulin's attack before appearing in front of his chest, and he only just barely had time to position his Golden Dragon spear in front of himself as a shield before he was struck by the almighty fist. His entire body instantly flew back like a cannonball before crashing heavily onto the protective barrier in the distance. In contrast, Arahang had only suffered a few scratch marks on his suit of battle armor from the Blue Emperor Golden Dragon annihilation claws. Tang Wulin's body bounced off the protective barrier, and Arahang charged forward once again in his full devastating glory before unleashing another punch. Tang Wulin swept his Golden Dragon spear upward with his left hand while his body quickly sped away horizontally. In terms of speed, he received enhancements from his Golden Dragon wings, so he certainly wasn't much slower than Arahang. He unleashed his Blue Emperor Golden Dragon whips its tail, lashing out with his leg amid a thunderous dragon's roar. Arahang made no effort to evade whatsoever as he adjusted the direction of his punch, bringing his fist downward. Bam! Tang Wulin's right leg dealt a vicious strike upon Arahang's body, but he felt as if he had kicked a mountain. Arahang let loose a muffled groan, but at the same time, his fist also struck Tang Wulin's left arm, which he had raised in defense. Crack! The clearly audible sound of bones being broken rang out, and Tang Wulin plummeted down from above. Just as he was about to crash down onto the ground, Arahang appeared beside him again, putting his terrifying strength on full display as he sent both of his fists crashing down toward Tang Wulin's body at once. If this attack were allowed to land, there was no way that Tang Wulin would survive. Right at this moment, a burst of golden light suddenly appeared beneath Tang Wulin, supporting his body from down below and allowing him to quickly dodge to the side. As such, he was able to evade Arahang's fists just when it appeared that the attack was unavoidable. At the same time, a massive figure descended from the sky, landing on Arahang's body and crushing him to the ground. His soul spirits, Gold Song and the Tyrant Dragon, had both been summoned at the same time. Tang Wulin's body tumbled through the air before he stabilized himself in the distance. He spread open his dragon wings, and at this point, a large area of the left side of his Dragon Moon battle armor had been damaged. Furthermore, his arm was bent at a very strange angle, clearly completely broken. The sorry state that he was in was a great indication of just how fearsomely powerful Arahang was. Before Tang Wulin had a chance to catch his breath, the enormous body of the Tyrant Dragon suddenly rose up into the air before immediately flying off to the side. It was a rather comical sight to see its massive 70-meter tall body flying through the air, but no one could bring themselves to laugh. Just how terrifyingly strong did one have to be capable of sending a Tyrant Dragon flying? Reddish light emerged from the ground like a rising sun before hurtling toward Tang Wulin again. The violent heartbeat rang out across the entire competition venue, and Tang Wulin flapped his wings in a panicked manner to try and accelerate. However, due to the injury inflicted on his left arm, he was clearly flying in a rather unstable manner, and Arahang almost immediately caught up to him. He reflexively thrust his Golden Dragon spear backward, but at this point, there wasn't even any spear projection emanating from the spear, so no matter how one looked at it, there was no way that he'd be able to withstand this punch. Arahang grabbed toward the tip of the Golden Dragon spear with his left hand while his right fist continued to hurtle toward Tang Wulin's back. It's over. Many of the spectators had already closed their eyes, unable to bear watching for any longer. With Arahang's terrifying strength, his fist was most likely going to reduce Tang Wulin to mincemeat. He was truly far too powerful. The power that he was currently displaying was even superior to the power that he'd unleashed during his match against Jade King. At the time, Jade King wasn't able to offer up any resistance. In contrast, the Golden Dragon King was able to put up some resistance, but it appeared to be completely futile in the face of Arahang's devastating power. How could a human attain such a terrifying level of strength? In front of the soul screen, Miu Yu was nodding gently as he murmured to himself. It's already quite remarkable that Wulin managed to last this long. Even among 8-ring soul Douluo, there are very few who can oppose the power of Ruang's sun body, which he attained after his third awakening. With the power from his body as the child of the sun, Ruang is powerful enough to face any title Douluo. Who would have thought that he would make another breakthrough in such a short time? At this rate, he should be able to reach the title Douluo level in another year at most. I finally have a suitable heir who can inherit my position as the master of the body sect. Mu Chen's brows were slightly furrowed. Tang Wulin was his most exceptional disciple, and even though Tang Wulin was losing this battle fair and square, it was still rather uncomfortable for him to watch this. In contrast, Zhen Hua wore a puzzled look on his face. When had Tang Wulin ever panicked like this? He was always as calm and calculating as a sly old fox. All of this had taken place in a very short time, and in the next instant, Arahang had already grabbed onto the tip of the Golden Dragon spear. In that instant, it was as if time suddenly stopped. Arahang's rights abruptly faltered while Tang Wulin's Golden Dragon spear instantly took on a reddish golden color. Right at this moment, Tang Wulin suddenly turned around, and he arched his spine in a very strange pose, meeting Arahang's right fist with his left shoulder. Bam! The battle armor on Tang Wulin's left shoulder was instantly pulverized, and even his shoulder itself had been completely destroyed as a cloud of blood mist erupted into the air. However, the keen observers in the spectator stands all discovered that his panic seemed to have suddenly disappeared, and it was as if his mutilated left shoulder didn't even have any connection to him. At this moment, Arahang felt as if the Golden Dragon spear that he was holding onto was like a vortex that was devouring his blood essence power in a frenzy. The power of his right fist had also been hampered as a result, thereby weakening his offensive prowess, but in his eyes, even that weakened attack should have been enough to take care of his opponent. Chapter 1080. However, as his fist struck Tang Wuling, he was able to completely pulverize Tang Wuling's shoulder and cauldron, but he was struck by a sense of emptiness from Tang Wuling, as if his entire body were hollow and non-existent. Furthermore, a very large portion of the power behind his punch had vanished on the spot, as if it had been directly devoured by Tang Wuling. In that instant, Tang Wuling's golden dragon spear also began to glow with scintillating light. The reddish golden color that was devouring Arahang's blood essence suddenly became even more pronounced, and a string of powerful vibrational explosions abruptly erupted. Much to Arahang's astonishment, he discovered that even with his insane strength, he was unable to maintain a secure grip over the tip of the spear. As such, almost right after Tang Wuling's left shoulder was destroyed, the vibrational force emanating from his golden dragon spear allowed it to strike Arahang's chest, despite the fact that it was still locked in Arahang's left hand. Thump. The sharp tip of the spear pierced straight into Arahang's body, and he let loose an explosive roar as the reddish golden light on his body began to release incredibly scorching heat, which was erupting outward in an attempt to force the golden dragon spear away. However, the suction force erupting from the golden dragon spear instantly increased drastically in potency, and it was constantly devouring his energy while reciprocating this energy into Tang Wuling's body. A golden figure also pounced toward him from behind, instantly winding itself around his body before opening its mouth and sinking its fangs into the back of his neck. It was Goldsong. There was only a spear's length of distance between Arahang and Tang Wuling, and no one had imagined that Tang Wuling would be able to turn the tables in the dire situation that he was in. The golden dragon spear really had pierced into Arahang's body, and at the same time, he was unleashing his golden dragon vibrational explosion. Tang Wuling was appraising Arahang with an intense gaze while the latter drew back his right fist to try and unleash another punch. However, he was prevented from doing so by Goldsong. He flailed violently with all his might, and in the face of his terrifying power as the child of the sun, Goldsong's body was torn in half. However, it was also right at this moment that Tang Wuling's golden dragon vibrational explosion reached the height of its power. Thump. The tip of the golden dragon spear pierced into Arahang's chest before stabbing into his huge heart. The golden dragon spear instantly turned red, and Arahang's formidable strength quickly began to seep away as if he were a punctured balloon. Roar. A thunderous dragon's roar erupted out of Tang Wuling's mouth as a series of blue, silver, and provines surged forth in a frenzy, winding themselves around Arahang's body. Meanwhile, the vast blood essence power within Arahang's body was flowing into Tang Wuling's body at an alarming rate. This influx of blood essence power was simply far too enormous, so much so that even Tang Wuling was unable to control it, and it surged directly toward his golden dragon king seals. The dragon core within Tang Wuling's body was absorbing this tremendous bloodline energy in a greedy manner, and it was beating violently. His bloodline aura was elevating at an astonishing rate, and every single one of the meridians under the surface of his skin bulged as they took on a reddish golden hue. One meridian exploded after another, causing plumes of blood mist to erupt from Tang Wuling's body. At the same time, his 11th golden dragon king seal was beginning to waver, and cracks had already appeared on its surface. As a result, the incredibly vicious golden dragon king essence began to seep through in wisps and strands. He abruptly flapped his golden dragon wings, propelling his own body downward along with Arahang, and the two of them crashed heavily onto the ground. His golden dragon vibrational explosion had reached the height of its powers, and under the enhancements of his blue silver emperor, it was triggering one explosion of light after another. Junior disciple brother, Arahang suddenly spoke, and his voice was tinged with a hint of bitterness. Huh. Tang Wuling was rather taken aback. You tricked me. A hint of peculiar emotions crept into Arahang's voice, but he didn't seem to be in too much pain. Never did Tang Wuling think that Arahang would say something like this to him. However, he was right. He had indeed tricked Arahang. In reality, Arahang had fallen into Tang Wuling's trap since the very beginning of this match. It was quite apparent to Tang Wuling that he was no match for Arahang in direct clashes of power. The congenital secret method of the body sect had allowed the sect to stand at the pinnacle of the Soulmaster world on the Douluo continent for countless years, and it was certainly nothing to be scoffed at. It could be said that the entire body sect had worked for several centuries to create the man that was Arahang. As such, Tang Wuling had been setting a trap for him from the very beginning. The lessons he had learned on the demonic island certainly weren't just for show, and he had actually been holding something back this entire time. It was his golden dragon spear. After being polished by the dragon slaying saber, the golden dragon spear had become extremely sharp, and the sharpest part about it was naturally none other than the spear itself. Tang Wuling had been hiding the sharpness of his spear this entire time, and only at the last second, when Arahang was about to secure his victory, did Tang Wuling sacrifice his left arm and left shoulder to create an opportunity for himself. Right before his left shoulder was struck, he unleashed the sixth technique of his 9 arts of the golden dragon nullification, to dispel and draw upon the vast majority of the power behind Arahang's attack. At the same time, he unleashed his golden dragon vibrational explosion to complement the sharpness of his golden dragon spear, and with the energy devouring ability of his spear, he was finally able to create a sliver of a chance for himself to secure victory. In the end, Arahang had underestimated the sharpness of the golden dragon spear. After successfully cultivating the congenital secret method, his body had indeed become extremely powerful, but it still wasn't enough to keep the golden dragon spear at bay in the end. No spear projection had emerged from Tang Wuling's golden dragon spear, but not because he was unable to release one. Instead, it was due to the fact that he hadn't even attempted to release it. The sharpness of the spear projection was far inferior to that of the actual spear itself. Only by using the actual spear could he perfectly unveil its newfound sharpness. At the same time, he was trying to convince his opponent that he was in such a blind panic that he wasn't even capable of releasing a spear projection anymore. One of the most important lessons Tang Wuling had learned on the demonic island was to use everything that could be used to secure victory. Prior to the commencement of the match, he had already gauged Arahang's powers. The congenital secret method of the body sect was extremely difficult to cultivate, and Arahang's soul power rank was far above his, so he knew that he most likely wouldn't be able to match Arahang in power. If he wanted to defeat Arahang, then he'd have to unleash his full power, and also find a suitable opportunity. Arahang had been cultivating at the body sect since birth, and had a very minimal contact with the outside world. Even if he possessed a sufficient wealth of battle experience, he was most likely lacking in experience in other areas. As such, ever since the match commenced, Tang Wuling had been holding back slightly. Otherwise, in terms of pure speed, he could actually surpass Arahang. It was exactly because of this that Arahang was lured into his trap. In the end, Tang Wuling took advantage of the opportunity he'd created for himself, turning the tables with his golden dragon spear's sharpness and devouring ability, and taking out his opponent in one fell swoop. However, Tang Wuling had also had to sacrifice a lot. He had allowed his left arm to be completely obliterated in order to buy himself this opportunity. If it weren't for the fact that he possessed sufficient mental fortitude to still maintain his peak offensive prowess even after the demolition of his arm, it would not have been an easy task to defeat Arahang. This was why Arahang was accusing Tang Wuling of tricking him. This sudden turn of events had caused the entire spectator stands to completely fall silent. No one could have anticipated that Golden Dragon King would be able to turn the tables under such desperate circumstances. This silence lasted for close to 20 seconds before a wave of raucous cheers rang out in a frenzy. Golden Dragon King! Golden Dragon King! Golden Dragon King! The deafening cheers were threatening to flip the entire competition platform on its head. The majority of the spectators supported Tang Wuling in the first place, but they had all been quite subdued as Tang Wuling was getting dominated in the match. Now, they were finally able to cheer for him to their heart's content. Tang Wuling stood up straight, and even though he had lost an arm, and half of his body was covered in blood, he still raised his golden dragon spear with his remaining arm in a proud manner. The word champion appeared in a massive font on the large screen. A crown projection had also appeared above Tang Wuling's head, cementing the notion that he had been crowned as the most powerful being of this entire competition. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.